Third Eye Blind has said, sent £5 and said, Farage sadly has stolen a big chunk of working class mindshare with his lies and othering. I don't know if either of you want to say anything about that.
Well, I would like to see, I don't know if you've seen any, Helena, like a breakdown of class when it comes to reform. Because I think there's the bigger thing here is age, right? Obviously, older people are voting reform, but we do hear a lot about, they fooled the working class. I do want to know how many working class people are actually voting reform.
Okay, so what's really important to understand here is that when people talk about class in this country, they use a thing called the NRS social grading system to decide who's what class, right? And it's the worst grading system. It is in no way an actual representation of what people's class interests are. And so there's ABC1 that is usually treated as middle class, right? And like some of the A's would be upper class, but most people fall into middle or working class within this social grading system outside of some very kind of individuals in society, top 5% or whatever it is. And then there is C2DE. And the way this grading system was set up was for an industrialized economy where, 40, 50% of people worked on factories or worked in factories or were on production lines. And the reality is that's like 8% of society now. So, for example, there's a huge glut of society who are people who work on very low wages with very bad conditions, who are living in rented accommodation, who don't have expendable income, who have bad pensions, whatever it might be. But because their kind of work that they do, for example, is working in a call center, doing data entry, because it's like in an office or like in a contact center, like it's sitting in a chair tapping on a keyboard, it gets treated as C1. And therefore, apparently, these people are middle class, right? People who are working minimum wage in call centers under this grading system are counted as middle class. And that is a huge sector of society. People working on the floor in retail. Again, people who do administration work. Again, these are not highly paid. These aren't highly paid workers, and because they're younger people, there's a big age distinction here, and younger people are far more likely to work in the service sector since we've moved to a service economy and industrial manufacturing isn't really here anymore. Because they're younger, they're far more likely to be treated as C1. Even people who are not earning very much, who have really important roles in society, who are treated as skilled workers like nurses and teachers, they get treated as B. They're the second highest category under the NRS grading system in terms of social grade. And lots of nurses have to use food banks. Yet apparently they're high-earning middle-class people by the social grading system. So that's the first reason why there's this idea that reform represent the working class, even though most people who actually work in society, they voted for Jeremy Corbyn, for example, as well. Like you say, Jeremy Corbyn was a middle-class leader. I'm like, well, no. He got not just the plurality, the majority of working age voters in 2017 and 2019. It was only the retired who kept him out of Downing Street. And the second thing, when you point to the age distinction, is people will determine class by access to university education, which in the yesteryear, when these kind of grading systems were created, the reality is that it was a very small elite echelon of people who went to university, right? And that's the case because there was restrictions based upon the level to which you could get into university because they were very elite, they were very selective, because they could afford to be because it's publicly funded. In a liberalised world where they want to make as much money as possible, the entrance has gone right down. They want to get as many people, so they've stopped being selective.
Yeah, it's no longer a signifier.
Exactly. It's not make grades go down, but literally half of young people nowadays go into higher education. So it's not a distinguisher of class. They come from all backgrounds. In fact, more working class people go to university nowadays than they did pre-liberalisation because they're not trying to be class exclusive than they were before. And so this means that young people who overwhelmingly vote left-wing, far more likely to have university degrees or have been through higher education, therefore get included based upon what is an age cohort who vote left-wing into seeing as a middle-class lefty socialist, when in reality there are people with degrees working in fucking Tesco.
McDonald's as well.
I mean, like that's what they say. Oh no, it's the left. They're left wing because they've been indoctrinated by the education system in universities. No, there's a class reason behind it, right? And also, what is a university degree today? It's not as privileged as it once was. Personal anecdote, but at 18 years old, I worked for RAC, breakdown care, but I was on the phone. So I did inbounds call center. Fucking hated it, by the way. I do not recommend call center jobs. It's the worst job I've ever had. And I'm 18 years old, right? And there were people in their 30s who went through university and sat in the same spot as me. And I thought, fucking hell, the job market must be fucked, first of all. I got there. I failed the interview, but my brother worked there for years, and they just got me the job in there. It's literally nepo shit, right?
Yeah.
And there are people in their 30s who have got degrees, and you just know it's not the same anymore.
But that's the story that's repeatable across the country. I mean, again, it's an anecdote, but when I was at uni myself, I had a part-time job at McDonald's, and I worked alongside people that were mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s. There was one guy in particular comes to mind who had a degree in one of the sciences. I think it was like theoretical physics or something insane.
Christ.
And he was there shoveling fries in McDonald's. Not that there's anything wrong with working in a fast food restaurant. We need people to do those jobs, but having a degree even in something like a Bachelor of Science, for example, doesn't indicate class, because you can be doing that and not be earning a fortune and working in a middle class job. So
Exactly. So like, but the things
by
like,
the way.
but the things it was worth pointing out that in those call centers, literally the way in which our media and our political class and people who do pollsters, for example, they would have treated you all as middle class, right? You were earning shitty wages in a call center because you're sitting at a desk, you're all C1s, you're all middle class. It's a ridiculous system. So that's why people here Reform UK have won over working class people. A lot of older people vote for them. And again, people who usually have houses, who own houses, pretty good pensions. For example, if you started working in the 70s, for example, when trade unions were far better represented and pensions were better. So the reality now is that there's this huge glut where the older generation more likely to work. The older generations were more likely to work in manufacturing, less likely to have degrees, but they're wealthier. But they vote Reform, and there's a smaller cohort of people there who were of university degrees, and so it makes it look like it's a working class thing, when in fact the reality, of course, is that the one thing that determines class is your relationship to production. And has anyone's relationship to production changed just because you were somebody who got a degree or you worked in service sector rather than manufacturing? No.
I brought up Vicky's comment because yes, I did work in Aztec West. So Vicky, you must be from Bristol. You just must know the area. But yeah,
I think she's just been stalking you, Curtis.
Maybe, but that's where I worked, and never set foot in Aztec West again, or the office buildings, because oh god, I hated it.
Yeah, I don't blame you, to be fair. They can be quite soulless jobs.
And if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership to just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.